For today's lesson, we're going to work on volume of a cylinder. So please look at these first two examples. It says the cylinder and the cone below have the same radius and the same height. The volume of this cylinder is 120 inches cubed, and the volume of this cone is 40 inches cubed. Example 2 says the cylinder cone below have the same radius and the same height again. The orientation is changed, which means the position of these cylinders and cones, but the volume of the cylinder is 90 and the volume of the cone is 30. Using the examples above, what do you notice about the volume of the cone compared to the volume of the cylinder with the same radius and same height? So what I noticed is they mentioned the volume of the cone first compared to the volume of the cylinder. And since they mentioned the word comparison, I'm going to compare the volume of the cone, which is 40 in this example, to the volume of the cylinder in this first example. And then I'm going to look at the volume of the cone in the second example, which is 30, compared to the volume of the cylinder. And if I look at that comparison and reduce it, I see that 40, if I divide both by 40, I have 1/3. And on this example, if I divide both by 30, I also get 1/3. So it looks like the volume of both of those cones with the cylinder that has the same height and the same radius is 1/3. So the volume of a cone will always be 1/3 the volume of a cylinder with the same height and radius. So that's important. So 1/3 as long as the height and the radius are the same. The formula for the volume of a cone is 1/3 times the base times the height. So let's write that. 1/3 of the base of the figure times the height, base of the cone, or we could write it like this: base times height divided by 3. Multiplying by 1/3 is the same as dividing by 3. And since the base is a circle, the area of the base is found by using pi r squared. Pi times r squared. Now recall, the big B is talking about the area of the base, and because we're working with a cone, the base is a circle. So the traditional way to write the volume of a cylinder is V for volume equals 1/3 times pi r squared, there's the circle, times height. So if you recall from the cylinder, when we find the exact answer, this is known as pi form or terms of pi, but it means we're going to leave pi, the symbol, in our math. So let's start out by writing the formula. The formula again is volume equals 1/3 times pi times r squared times the height. Since everything is being multiplied, we can kind of move the pieces around. The only thing I will caution you about is because we have the order of operations would say, well, since everything is being multiplied, we can move things around. This is being multiplied, but we have to be careful because we have to do the exponent first. So let's go ahead and substitute in our formula. We have 1/3. We have pi, the symbol's going to stay in the math. We have r squared. They've given us the radius as 5. So I'm going to take 5 and square it. And then we have the height as 8. So let's go ahead and square this first. So we're going to take 5 squared. So we have 1/3 times 5 squared, which would be 25, times 8, and you're going to notice that I skipped pi. We're going to just move pi to the end because it's going to stay a symbol the entire time. And because everything's being multiplied, I'm allowed using the commutative property to move things around. Order doesn't matter when everything's being multiplied. So now using your calculator, I'd like you to take 1/3, 1 ABC 3 times 25 times 8. I often break it down into smaller pieces, but go ahead and multiply that and leave your answer in your calculator. So you should have gotten 66 units. U means for the whole number, whole units, and 2/3. And since we've multiplied all of the rational numbers here, we just place pi at the end of this. And we want to acknowledge that it's centimeters cubed. That's how many cubic units are inside that cone. Now the reason I wanted you to leave this is because when we start this, you're going to notice that the measurements are exactly the same. It's the same cone. We're going to write the formula the same. For the sake of time, I'm just going to move on. We're going to substitute the same way. This next step, we're going to do exactly the same thing. And so I'm going to have you start from this step. So we're going to take this step right here. And the only difference when we use the pi key, we're now going to take 66 and 2/3, that's why I ask you to leave it your calculator, times pi. So you're going to press the pi key. And then I would like you to write all of those digits. And hopefully this is the number that's on your calculator. Now that's not very user-friendly, and I'm just acknowledging with the dots that it continues on. It doesn't have a pattern, so I can't use a repeating bar. But it says to round to the nearest requested place value. And so right now I'm going to request that you round it to its nearest hundredth. And that would look like this. We're going to use what dot the heck. We would use whole number, what, dot for the decimal, T for the tenth, and H for the hundredth. So we're rounding the number. We're going to see 209 and 43 hundredths are 209 and 44 hundredths. Well, this bossy 9, the number back behind where we rounded, tells the 3 to go up. So the volume is approximately 209 and 44 hundredths cubic centimeters. Okay? So the nice thing about using pi form is if we leave the answer in terms of pi, we're going to have all the same steps, except if we're asked to use the pi key or round, we just continue by taking that number times pi and then rounding. So our final way we can work with pi starts out very similar way. We're going to write the formula, acknowledging that we know what the formula is that we're going to use for the volume of a cone. And now where this differs is we're going to substitute including for pi. If we're given permission to use 3.14, where we see pi, that's going to become 3.14. The radius of this particular cone is still 5. We're squaring it according to the formula, and the height is still 8. So everything is the same except now pi, we were able to replace that. So once again, we have to square according to order of operations. We're going to do this first. So that becomes volume equals 1/3 times 3 and 1400 to 3.14 times 25 times 8. And you can put all of this in the calculator at once if you like, or you can take it part by part. I personally like to take 1/3 times 3.14, 1/3 of 3, that would be approximately 1. You're going to notice it's over 1 because of the decimals. And then that 1 times 25, I know my next answer, or the 1 point something times 25, I know my next answer should be over 25, but close to it. And then 25 or over 25 times 8 would be 200. So my answer should be over 200 because I have more digits. But that helps me make sure that my answer is sound. And if you notice the answer next to it, this is very close. Again, this is approximately, and I should have, the minute I put pi, should use the approximate signs. It's 209.3 repeating. And that's centimeters cubed. And if I compare these two, the answer that uses pi is always going to be smaller than the answers that uses more digits of pi. So now let's go on to cone that gives us a diameter and asks us to asks us to list the height, diameter, and radius. And then also we're going to use the other version of this formula. Instead of multiplying by 1/3, we're going to divide by 3, and you can decide which you prefer. The nice thing about dividing by 3 is it's perhaps a little bit easier dividing by 3 than entering 1/3 in the calculator, but it really shouldn't matter because we should get the same answer. So let's move on. So our height in all of these examples, the cone, I see the height is 27. They just tip the cone over. That's the height from the bottom of the circle to the top of the cone. The diameter is 18, which we're not going to use. It's not in this formula, but we need to find half of it. We need to find the radius. So the radius is 9. So we're going to use 9. We're going to use 27. And so that's going to be the same for each one of these cones. We're using the same exact cone, and these are the measurements that we need. So this time I'm going to ask you to write the formula like this. Volume equals pi r squared, there's the circle, h, that's a cylinder, but remember we're taking 1/3 of it. So we can divide that by 3. So let's see if we prefer this form of the formula. So we're going to substitute now, and when I substitute, I have pi times r squared. In this case, the radius is 9, and we square it, times the height, which is 27. And we're going to divide this all by 3. So you may be noticing that pi is in front, and we actually want to find the exact answer. So if I put 1 times 3, that's still going to stay 3. And now if I want to just scoot this pi, since it looks like it's in the fraction form, pi divided by 1 or anything divided by 1 would just be that number. So I'm going to rewrite this now as 9 squared times 27 divided by 3, and I'm just going to move that pi to the end. So now, if you take 9 squared, you're going to get 81 times 27 divided by 3, and pi is going to stay in the answer. So would you put that in your calculator? And by the way, we could have done this a little bit differently. We could have reduced this because 3 is a factor of 81 or 27. But I just want to let you know I'm trying to do all the little parts to see how we can do this. You should have gotten 729 times pi. So I wanted to use this form. So let's try this again. This time, if we do this, we get to start where we stop, because all we're going to do is we're going to take 729 times the pi key. So all of these steps are exactly the same. When we use the pi key, we just actually enter the number 729 times pi. So pause, use your calculator, and write down all the digits. So hopefully this is what you have. And this time, let's round to the nearest tenth. And again, they'll give you a request where to round to. So we're going to use what, which is all of the numbers in front of the digit, the decimal rather, dot, the decimal, and t for tenth. So this is going to be 2,290, and 2/10 are 2,290 and 3/10. The bossy number back behind where we're rounded tells this 2 to stay. So volume is approximately 2,290 and 2/10. The unit of measure is inches cubed, and I should have put that here too. All right, so last one we're going to do together. This time we have permission to substitute 3.14. So we're going to start with this formula again. We're going to write the formula. So volume equals pi r squared h divided by 3. But this time, where pi is, we get to replace it with 3.14. We're going to replace the radius with 9, and we square it, and replacing the height with 27, all divided by 3. Now at this point, we could take one of the numbers that's divisible, we could take the 27, which is divisible by 3, and then we could also work with this like this. If we divided 27 divided by 3, it would be 9. So we could write that. But so that I don't confuse you, in case that's confusing, I'm just going to go back over here. So this would be 3.14. We're going to square this first. Get 81 times 27 divided by 3. So would you put that in your calculator, please? And just to let you know, if your answer is somewhat similar to this, that's a pretty good indication your answer is correct. So your volume answer should be, V for volume is approximately 2,289 and 6/100 inches cubed. So if I compare this, it's a little bit smaller than this number, so that makes sense. So that's all for today, but I just want to let you know tomorrow on your remote day, I'm going to ask you to set up the practice problems using the formula, the substitution, and then our next in-person day, we'll finish up completing the last step, finding the volume with our calculators. Thanks for listening. Enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.